Hello and welcome to Bull Banter, the podcast where two brothers from the Southwest talk about the Macarthur Bulls, the A-League, and all things football. This is our Olympic Games edition of the pod. We'll be discussing the progress of the Matildas and the Olyroos, and some exciting things ahead. We've got Daniel Sims here, as always, my brother. How are you today?
Mate, I'm doing fabulous in lockdown. The Olyroos giving a little hope to everyone in lockdown, I think, right now.
Yeah, and the Matildas are doing well.
Yeah. And, if either team gets knocked out, we're happy to cover the long jump, the high jump, you name it, we're on top of it.
Yeah.
We're going deep this Olympics.
We've got to look at some football. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe we'll cast our eye over the gold medal game. But yeah, no, let's get into things. So before we jump into the Olympics, we do have a little bit of things to worry about at home, and that's a lot of signings. Macarthur FC have gone into the transfer market several times, covering many of our departures who were key players last season. So just to jog everyone's memory, because I know it's been a while since we've even really thought about football domestically in Australia. We've lost from Macarthur. Benyat's gone, Sauceda's gone, Derbyshire, Franich, Milligan, and Puyo were sort of the main first teamers, you could say, who've departed Macarthur Bulls. And we've brought in quite a few players. Some of them we knew about before the season's end, but I've been surprised sort of week after week looking at the Macarthur socials and just, you pop up every now and then and see, oh, there's a new player we're getting today. Cool. Sometimes they rort you a bit like, oh, it's just a player we already had who signed again, but still good news.
I mean, it's good that, it's causing that reaction, and like credit to the staff at the Bulls. They've done a really good job recruiting this season, but then it's always funny seeing the comments like, oh, they're buying the league. But I think so far we've recruited the best out of any team in the league by far.
Get your business done early, and it gives you a full preseason to sort things out. So just to take you through the list of who we've got Ulysses De Villa, and can confirm through his Instagram stories he's loving life in Emerald Hills at the moment. He's got his family over here from Mexico, so yeah, he's loving it, the suburban life.
Emerald Hills of
Daniel
all
De
places
Silva,
too. Wow.
who I'm not sure if he's moved from Gosford just yet, but he's signed up for next year. Craig Noon, Tommy Uzcock coming up from Western United. Tommy Urich signed from Adelaide, to a mixed response. I was a bit surprised by. Tommy, I think, will do a good job for us. He's similar in a similar vein to Derbyshire, but he's got a couple other elements to his game. So Derbyshire was definitely like just an out-and-out poacher, getting on the end of things. Tommy has that ability, but he also has a quite decent build-up play. So he can sort of drop off, play that almost in the 9 role, and then allow the wingers to loop in behind, because he's got that big frame and he's quite active.
That doesn't help that, the media, and it seems like the general consensus out there among A-League fans is that he's past it. But, he can still offer something to us, I believe, especially with the players that are going to be around him. He'll be able to do a job for us, for sure.
I mean, he got a bit of the boo boy mentality thrust upon him a bit when he was going through a lack of form for the Socceroos. But, he scored more goals for the Socceroos than Jamie McLaren. So, he's got that to hold to his name. And, on his day, he's pretty unplayable. We saw in the elimination final against Brisbane Roar, the Adelaide one, Tommy Urich scored 2 unbelievable goals where he just did it all himself. So hopefully he can bring more of that. Whereas you got to be honest, Derbyshire was great at tap-ins and getting the ball in the back of the net, but he wasn't just creating from nothing.
Yeah, at times his hold-up play was all right, but we got to move forward from Derbyshire now.
You're right.
So
and he's not as Urich not as old as Derbyshire, so we'll get a few good years out of him. Problem is he is a bit injury prone. He's had his niggles here and there with injury, so hopefully with a full preseason behind him and he's able to get himself right, and hopefully he's coming up for a big season. And literally just before we started recording, Jordan Much was announced. We've gotten him from Western Sydney. Now, when he first came to the league with his championship and Premier League pedigree, everyone was thinking, oh, this guy's going to light the league up. Kind of similar to Benyat, there's high expectations around him as a player. You can't say that he bossed the league by any stretch of the imagination last year, but he is a tidy player to have. You'd say he's that midfield, keeping things ticking over kind of anchor man that Milligan or Benyat was for us last season. And I think with a really energetic Denis Genreau next to him, he'll do fine. He's got quite a good boot on him. He'll just rotate the play around, and he loves a good tackle too. So I think we've got the right balance now in our midfield, particularly when you consider Noon or De Silva or De Villa playing in that advanced role.
And you got to consider that, I'm just reading here, he's 6'2". Like, he's a bit more of a presence in the midfield. Like, most of our height has just been on that back line where you have, Shuzna and Jovanovic, sorry. And, he's also 29 as well, so could get a few decent seasons out of him, or, he's not going to be past it, but when he turns up for us,
Yeah, I think it's a mentality thing. He played in the MLS as well, I think, for LAFC. And it seems like since his career in the earlier days in the Premier League, he's kind of floated around and chased the check, so to speak. So hopefully he puts a full effort in for us, but he could be one of those players that flops. We'll just have to wait and see. But, if it goes well for us and he plays to his ability, he could be a very tidy acquisition there. Wanderers have let him go, and could be a good profit for us. So some great signings there, and it's good to see us getting our business done early. I know, everyone's complaining about us buying the league and questioning our salary cap, but we would have had. I mean, you look at some of the players we've released or let go, they would have commanded considerable wages, and the rest of the squad around them is rather young. So we had a lot to spend, and I think we've spent it pretty well considering the situation in the world at the moment and the players that are available.
Yeah, definitely. And you don't want to be in a situation like Adelaide at the start of last season. If you can remember, they were off to a horrific start, and they were bringing in players like Goodwin at the very last minute on loan.
Yeah, from Saudi. And that's basically because Goodwin did a favour to the club because they were desperate. So, yeah, they were very lucky in that regard. And I just like that we seem really organised. I mean, we spoke to Sam Krislovic late last season, and he said that, as soon as the season's over, everyone around us seems to clock off, but that's day one of next season for them. So it looks like they're keeping to that standard, which is good to see.
Yeah, 100%. Exciting things coming next season, that's for sure.
Yeah, man. Keen for it. I'm missing it, man. I'm missing being able to go to games. Maybe it's just lockdown brain got me really reminiscent, but man, I look at some of the highlights and I was like, man, we didn't know how good we had it. But we're going on to something a bit more optimistic. The Olympic Games kicks off tonight with the opening ceremony, but the group games for the football anyway, for the men's and women's, kicks off a little bit earlier, and we got off to a flyer with both sides. So we'll start off with the Olyroos. And Daniel, do you want to take us through this match? I mean, it was just, we shocked the world, didn't we?
Yeah, we put a little story up before the game saying shocked the world, and that's exactly what happened. Everyone was saying Argentina, and obviously they have that, pedigree. South America, always churning out talent across Europe and everything. And we've done the business, and seeing us play as well as we did as well, it was just the icing on top, I think. And
I don't think we necessarily, I was watching it, I didn't have a whole lot of faith that we'd play as well as we did. I thought we'd definitely fight and be combative and be in the game, but I was surprised by how much possession we had in good areas, how dangerous we were looking going forward, how comfortable we were at the back dealing with the Argentinian threat. Now, obviously, we didn't have it all our own way, and we were quite lucky to be on the receiving end of some fortunate refereeing. But we took it to them and showed everyone in the world that Australia, we know how to play. And just thinking too, I know a lot of people slag off Australian football, compare the current crop of Socceroos to the golden generation and basically say that, what happened? Why didn't we profit off that first World Cup that we went to in 2006? Where was the momentum carried on from that? But I think now, especially, you'll start to see kids who were like in their formative years who saw that World Cup, those 4, 5, 6-year-olds back then, the 2000s babies and up, coming through and being like, oh, I see that happen and I'm going to make my whole life about being, the best soccer player I can be.
Yeah,
whereas someone who was like a 9 or 10-year-old, they might have just missed that critical step, or they might have gotten into it later and then, the development pathway is stuffed. Plus, development these days it's a much better pathway than it was.
Yeah, that's for sure. Like you see with England's crop of players now, they were born out of that 2000s era, following the disappointment of the 90s sort of thing. And they're growing up watching all these quality players, and it just inspires them. And the same thing's definitely going to happen with us. And it was on display, you have to say. But I think the fact that we were able to take the game to Argentina, and there was countless times where we're running at their defense with numbers, obviously, like you said, going into the game, you expect us to be on the back foot, sort of parking the bus, and maybe we get a cheeky one, but we were breaking them down quite well. There was a couple of iffy moments, but I suppose we should start with Blocky Wales tapping that one home after a bit of an unfortunate miss by Mitch Duke, who just...
I think he left it. I think it was smart.
You reckon that was on purpose? You reckon?
No chance. No, he tried to score for sure. But it worked in our favour. Yeah. You're right. We had that free kick near halfway. Suter just pinged it down the touchline for Joel King from Sydney FC. The left back got way forward and just beat his man for pace. Good first touch, just was able to bring it down, control it straight away. And then the very next touch just, swung it in along the ground around that sort of dangerous, just outside the 6-yard box area. And we just had the bodies in the right spot. If Mitch Duke gets any contact on it, it's a goal. I mean, he missed, and thankfully the defender tracking him also couldn't adjust his body to get a touch on it, and it just fell kindly for Wales, who tapped it in and then went right off. He just went and smacked the corner post with the bottom of his boot. Something out of FIFA.
A bit of Jamie Vardy on that one, where he two-footed the
corner post. Not quite that bad.
Corner post. Yeah. But yeah, we had those good moments, but then, and credit where credit's due, we were playing out from the back. Some of the long balls we were pinging were pretty spectacular, I got to say. But there's still that sense of panic football and a bit of uncertainty in a lot of our passes. Yeah. And you just look at how Argentina is knocking it around. Obviously, they're gonna have a bit more technical ability than our boys, but they just look so calm and composed when they're just flicking it around. And then a lot of stray passes were happening for us this game.
Yeah. And I don't know whether that's down to nerves or particular players, trying to go long rather than playing conservative. It was good in a way not having a crowd there, because Arnie was just yelling for 90 minutes. Every single time we didn't have the ball, he was literally calling on each player to press or hold. When we had
mainly
the ball,
mainly at Arzani.
Yeah, he was on Arzani's case all night. Daniel, don't go. Because Arzani's that player, that X-Factor player who just wants to dribble, wants to go past people. Doesn't matter if there's two in front of him, he's going to go bang, bang through. Or he's going to try and play the miracle ball. And it doesn't always work. At international level, you've got to pick your moments. I think, especially in the first half before the send-off, we were a little bit naive. There were periods of the game where we were trying to play out of the back constantly, and then looking to pick that killer ball for a counter, and it just wasn't happening. We kept playing the same trap. And even when we did get a bit of possession in the opposition half, it wasn't like we turned around and tried to bring all of our players up. It was, we got to go to goal now. And I just think that's a bit naive. Arzani did a good job winning a couple of key fouls just to take the pressure off. A bit of shithousery rolling around here and there just to waste a bit of time. which I don't mind because it helps us. You hate to see it when it's against you. But I think we've picked up a bit of awareness from our, international rivals in the Asian Confederation, seeing them do it and how it works for them. So, waste a bit of time, allowed the boys to catch a bit of breath, and it worked for us. Also think that it was really good, and I see now why Mitch Duke got chosen to be the only overage player that went, because you're thinking, surely if you've got an overage player, you're going to pick Jamie McLaren, who is the top goal scorer in the A-League and is regularly the Socceroos striker. So if you're going to go for a striker, go for him. But Mitch Duke's so good in the air. When the boys can't play out of the back effectively, which at times they were getting shut down and it was just giving the ball away, they got that outlet ball to Duke, who at the very least is going to compete with any defender and cause issues for them dealing with it, which he did on several occasions. And then all it was that I think the midfielders have been taught well to follow that long ball and get on the end of the seconds from Mitch Duke, basically. So it's always coming back into that midfield. And because we have a midfield three, typically one of us is getting there or getting pressure right on that ball straight away, which then allows us to move up the field and not be so hemmed back in our own box. So, tactically, I think Arnold really got it right. But we were helped out by a certain Serbian referee late on in the first half. Do you want to talk us through that moment, Daniel?
Yeah, so in my opinion, the refs just made an absolute blue. So I think Atkinson's been released down the sideline and he's gotten behind the defender. I think his name's Ortega.
Ortega.
Argentine. Yeah. And it's one of those Raheem Sterling fouls where he's pushed it past the player and it's definitely going out, but the defender stuck the leg out.
Yeah.
Cops the contact, you get the free kick and he gets a yellow. And, that's fair. But then there's a bit of pushing and shoving in the box with, I forget who.
It was a bit of Riley McGree. Just bastardry, getting under the skin, playing like a mongrel from the A-League.
Bit of pushing and shoving back and forth. And then, the refs just sort of had enough of it. And he decides to give a double yellow card to both of them. Which
is what you see like at, park football level when there's two blokes who just have a bit too much,
it's one of the classic all-age ones where it's like, calm down, boys. Like, we got work tomorrow, some of us. Yeah, it's not that serious.
It just takes the air out of the game usually and you get both the warning and then it's like, all right, settle. But no, the ref blew it up a few times. I was thinking, oh, sweet, we've got a really good free kick in a good position. Suter's going to get on the end of this right before the first half ends and we'll go in with a 2-0 lead. But it took like 3 minutes for the free kick to be taken because, we're lining it up and then everyone's jostling for position. The Argentinians are not giving an inch. And it was funny, like the referee stopped it a few times to be like, oi, stop. And then, they didn't heed the warning. The goalkeeper actually pushed Ortega into McGree, which then caused a bit of a scuffle wrestle. Nothing really in it, but I think the ref mustn't have realised who was in the scuffle because I don't think you give a second yellow for that.
No, definitely not.
I mean, given the situation, he did warn a few times, but a bit of a shocker. But, finally in international football, we're on the good end of a shocking decision rather than the bad end. I'm sure we all still have PTSD from 2006. So, Anyway, so we go in first half 1-0 up and we're beaming and you just think like, oh shit, we could really be on here. But I was also a bit worried about, the ref may be thinking, oh, am I going to do an equalizer? You know what South Americans are like when they get in the box. If they're desperate, they'll throw themselves to ground and anything that was sort of in the realm of 50-50, I think, could have been easily given. But thankfully, we didn't even give them the opportunity. I thought it was a real mature performance from the Olyroos and we were just, we managed the game well. When we didn't have the ball, it never looked threatening, really. Argentina never really got that clear opportunity on goal that we were able to force. And really, we probably should have scored a few more. And
we had some really good chances
more controlling with possession. But, we managed it well. We got the win and that's what matters. And, if we were a bit sharper with our finishing on the counter, we could have maybe had 4 or 5.
Yeah, like in the first half, Lockie Wales hit the post again, or hits the crossbar, I think. but it was offside anyway.
Mm.
And then, you got Mitch Duke with that cheeky chip right after kickoff in the second half. He hits the post twice. And then
we came out of the box trying to kill him, didn't we?
Yeah. That 2-on-1 where Rylan McGree's through. He's got the easy, sweaty goal there against the keeper, and he just underhits the pass. And I think it was Duke
Wales.
Or Wales. Yeah, he
Wales,
gets caught on his feet.
He got onto it and he did the right thing. Like he shifted it inside, but the Argentines were able to scramble, and it was kind of that one where the keeper is too close and is able to just smother. Riley should have definitely taken it on.
Yeah. So as you said, a different day where 4 to the good, but it was a bit concerning, I guess. Majority of the second half, we just sort of let Argentina have the ball, even though we had the man advantage. And it was like a 5-minute period of like, all right, let them have the ball. And then I suppose we were able to, most of the time, turn it into a counter where we had a, 3-on-3 or 4-on-4 or something. Mm. And that's where we look most dangerous, I think. But yeah, I think another area of concern moving forward is, the amount of fouls and yellow cards we're getting. Just because in a tournament setting, if you get a certain amount of yellows, you get that 1 match suspension.
Mm. So it's across the first 3 games in the group stage. If you accrue 2 yellows, you're suspended the next match.
Yeah.
So this next match against Spain, like let's say a Jean-Ro, McGree, Metcalf, bloody Mitch Duke, a couple of our defenders got yellows as well. Any of them cop another yellow and they're gone for the Egypt match, which could be really decisive in terms of who gets out of the group. We're leading the group at the moment because Egypt drew against Spain. But, a lot will come down to how well we do on Sunday night against Spain. If we can get, God forbid, another 3 points there, we're sorted, right? We can rest players. It's going to be amazing. But, we need to get, you'd hope, at least a draw. That should guarantee us going through. But
I think even
football's interesting.
Obviously, with 4 points, you're like pretty much a guarantee to go through, I think. Yeah. But then 3 is sort of pushing it, but I don't really see us getting past Spain. It's just got to hope that just got to hope that these yellow cards don't come back to bite us, and then we can't really bring it to Egypt in that last game.
Yeah. And before we go any further about like looking ahead to other games, we've got to talk about that second goal. Marco Tilio gets brought on late. 2 touches
second
later, he's an Olympic hero. You hate to see it because, he did knock the Bulls out of the semi-final in the A-League, but credit where credit's due. It was quite a classy finish. And, to do it against an Argentine side that, and like for Marco Tilio as well, not involved in any of the qualifiers for the Olyroos, not given a sniff, but just the outstanding season that he had at domestic level has just catapulted him. And this run of form seems to be continuing, and long may it continue because, at this rate, he looks like he'll be better than Arzani for sure.
Yeah, like you put Arzani in that same situation. I don't think he's putting it top bins like Tilio.
He'll probably try a Rabona or something.
Which I cut it back and forth, but no. Yeah. What a
moment.
What a moment. Like, speechless.
Man, I was jumping off the lounge. I was clapping. Like, you couldn't write it better. The scripting of it, like, straight off the bench.
As soon as you see him about to hit it, you're just like, oh,
surely not.
That's in. So it's not even hit it, and then you're thinking, oh, that's fucking in.
Yeah. No, it was an amazing moment, and like you were talking about before, gave us something to cheer about at home here in lockdown. Special mention as well to our midfield. I think Arnie's got it really spot on, the balance of it. So McGree plays sort of in a 10 role almost, but they're also able to rotate. So, and that's something that I also found on the wings as well, we'll talk about. But the midfield, you've got Jean-Ro, who whole of last season next to Benyat was just cleaning up his mess, basically, like being the little terrier that just goes and gets the ball and feeds it to Benyat, right? Metcalf has that deep lying playmaker, that progressive midfielder who can get the ball from defense to attack. And then McGree, who can get on the ball and really feed the wingers and the strikers. Genre, there's not much of him. Like, he's a little guy, little nugget, but he's so tidy on the ball, and he's the guy you want to find when you want to keep possession. And he's, when he decides to let himself loose a little bit, he can dribble and he can pass and he can find the right players. He looked nervy at times in the match, but, why wouldn't you be? But he really grew into it. And then the second half just did what he needed to do, kept us possession, barely ever lost it, and scrapped really hard for the ball. So, credit to our MacArthur medalist from last year, Denis Genre. And Metcalf and McGree, I think they've got a good little mix there, because, McGree, when he gets tired or overextends himself, he can drop back in, and then Metcalf's up, and then Genre's up, and they can sort of rotate in that three. And then same with the wingers and the likes of Atkinson and Joel King. When we want to initiate that high press, we can get, overlapping, like say we've got the ball in the opposition's half. We've got the overlapping runs of King and Atkinson, right? If we happen to lose the ball, King and Atkinson don't just give up and start jogging back. They're pushing forward. And Arzani and who was on the right wing for us last night? Wales, Lockie Wales. They're falling back and covering for them. So that sort of overlapping ability to both track forward, like push forward with the pressing, and track back in defense. You saw Arzani and Wales get back in the box to block crosses at times. Really good, that understanding, that tactical, I guess, ability that Arnold has put into the side, where they're covering for each other. And it makes it really hard for oppositions to know when to go and when to stop, because if they've always got someone on them, they're not going to necessarily risk going forward and pushing that ball. Yeah. If they've always got pressure when they think they shouldn't have pressure because the person who's usually marking them is not there, that can create mistakes. And we won it up the pitch a few times, which could have led to further goal scoring opportunities. So, it was really good to see. And I think the core of this team could end up being mainstays in the Socceroos for years to come.
Yeah, and I think Atkinson's like absolute class. So the more he can bomb forward, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
And even if we are caught up high with our wing backs and our wingers up, the other team starts to get past Sutar and Deng at the back, and they were pretty immense for us last night. I think Deng got the man of the match.
Like, they're Argentina's striker, Gaich, he's like built like a fucking unit, and he didn't win a header all night. Like, Harry Suter just towered above him. Tommy Deng, I mean, the man's made of steel. He just didn't give that guy any space or time. We looked so assured as well. Like, there was no nerviness at the back. And, we're winning every header. Like, it's just so good to see. Usually, defensively, Australian teams are a little weak. So it was just so awesome to see us really dominate in that regard. Nothing was getting through those two centre-backs.
Yeah. Plus, like, when you've got sort of the Argentines running out of defense, which they were a lot of the time, because it got to the point where, Argentina's a man down and they have to rely on that like individual spark to sort of create something. And, to their credit, they were beating like one or two players, but then we were just forcing them into the path of Deng and Sutar, and they were just like eating them for lunch, breakfast and dinner. So
yeah. And that's why I say it's like a very mature performance. The only kind of joy the Argentines got was when they went down the wings. So like when Joel King or Nathaniel Atkinson were buggered from doing the overlapping runs and pushing high and wide, like wing backs, that's where they were able to be exploited. But anytime they get in and they whip a cross in, guess who's there? It's Harry Suter with his big forehead.
Yeah. They're spewing that they didn't bring Higuain as the overage player.
Could you imagine? Higuain at the Olympics. Great result for Australian football, and hopefully that inspires the boys to believe in themselves, that they can actually, go and beat Spain, go and beat Egypt, and really push further into the Olympics, because we've not at this level had much success in the past. So it's really great to see.
Yeah.
We play against Spain 8:30 p.m. on Sunday night, and if we can get a result there, anything but a loss would be pretty much guaranteeing progress through to the next stage.
I'm not hopeful for that game because Spain are class. Like they might have slipped up against Egypt, so maybe we can replicate that. But like you just look at their squad on paper,
completely stacked.
It's just class. They're going to have like 75% possession of the ball.
Yeah. It's going to be an ugly one.
Yeah. To watch for us. I mean, as a football fan, it would be fun. But if you're Australian, I don't think it will be very fun. But it's what we're here for. Yeah. No one thought we were going to get 3 points off Argentina, but here we are.
We'll just have to shock the world again.
Yeah. And I suppose before we wrap this up, the Matildas are off to a bit of a flying start as well at the Olympics.
Yeah, so there was a lot of apprehension around the team because since Tony Gustafsson, who's the manager of the Matildas, has stepped in, he hasn't won a game in all the friendlies, in all the warm-up matches. So people were worried. We're thinking, these Matildas who were like, top 4 in the world, if not arguably top of the world a few years ago.
One of the best players in the world as well in the women's game.
Yeah, with Sam Kerr, right? And then they've fallen off. And obviously you had all the issues with, Alan Stajic, his dismissal and how that sort of shook the team and they were sort of struggling to find their identity. I know Ante Milicic took them to the 2018 World Cup and they, didn't perform to the expected level. But, against New Zealand, as you expect, they looked really solid. They came flying out of the gates and it was much more open than I thought they'd be. So, they were just surging forward at every opportunity. Sam Kerr just looks a step above every other player on the pitch. Like, she didn't even have the best game for her standards. But every time she did get the ball, opposition was standing off her and just, crossing their fingers basically because she can do what she wants.
Bit of a Susaeta effect where they just sort of stand off for her because they don't want to just get done,
Yeah.
They don't want to foul her. A lot of running in behind the defense and getting numbers in the box. So good stuff to see.
Yeah. Overlapping runs from Ellie Carpenter, especially
definitely
for the crosses were excellent. And she got player of the match there. But I don't know. It was a bit of a thing where we were looking so good, so comfortable in possession. And then, we just played the wrong pass or we'd get through and it'd be the one player to beat and we'd just go the wrong direction. I think the girls probably haven't had enough time together before this tournament. What with the odd seasons that happen in women's football, it's not sort of codified as much as men's football in terms of the schedules. So I think a lot of our girls were sort of off peak or coming down off a hard season. So I noticed a lot of tiredness, especially in the second half. And I would have hoped that maybe Gustafsson made a couple of subs before he did. But yeah, the goals. So Tamika Yallop basically won it after New Zealand took it off us after a surging attack. And then they lost it back into the midfield. Yallop picked it up and just did a quick 1-2 with Kerr, who first time ball back through and then surged through. And it was one of those ones where the keeper came out and closed down the space and you're thinking, it's probably, going to be deflected and just go wide. But she just smashed it, just rollicked it into the net. And, you're on your feet. You're thinking, this is the Matildas we know. 15 minutes in and then 34 minutes in, we get a corner, dominant the entire time. And Sam Kerr just ghosts in and heads it in just outside the near post from 6 yards. Amazing that she was able to be pretty much untracked for that run. And it was an arrow header too, went straight to the keeper, but she just couldn't keep it out. Bounced up off her hand, crossbar down and in. One of those magic goals. And I think set pieces are going to be a good thing for us. We got plenty of tall timber in Alana Kennedy didn't play, but she come off the bench or feature in other games. Claire Polkinghorne as well, Van Egmond, and Sam Kerr's a threat in the air as well. So I think set pieces will be surprisingly where we score a lot of our goals this tournament for the Matildas. And apparently Gustafsson, that's sort of his specialty. So they've probably set it up where, Kerr's just outside the box, and she just, like if you look at the replay for that second goal, she kind of is just walking, gets into a jog. And by the time the ball arrives where it needs to be, she's sprinting and jumping into it. So a bit of guile there to get that second goal. And at that point, you're thinking, sweet, like this is going to be a romp. We'll smash them probably 4-0. But it didn't end up going that way.
Yeah, the New Zealand keeper actually made a ton of quality saves. Like, even though the 2 goals we did score were, a bit iffy, not much you can do when they've got that much power behind them. But there was about like 8 or so saves where she's 1-on-1 or just diving full stretch to get a hand on it. And we just couldn't really get past her.
Yeah. I think we were really trying to make a statement with this first game. Like, if it was different opposition maybe, or we didn't feel as comfortable as we did in controlling the game, maybe we wouldn't have gone as forward as much and maybe played it a bit more around, tired out the opposition. But every time we got the ball, they were just launching attacks forward, looking for Kerr, who was peeling off the shoulder. Ellie Carpenter was getting forward. You got Hayley Razzo, who was featuring well in there as well. And Van Egmond in the middle was just putting in work. Like, later on, when New Zealand sort of wrestled their way back into the game and got a late consolation goal, Van Egmond really steadied the ship for us because we were a little bit panicky at times. And it's strange to see that from the Matildas, who usually are so dominant and just know their game and we're doing well. But Van Egmond was immense for us, breaking up attacks and just distributing the ball, getting it to feed every time, which we didn't do. So in contrast to the Olyroos performance, I think the Matildas were a bit naive at times. When it wasn't going their way, they were trying to force things a bit too much. And sometimes you just need to have a rest in possession for 5 minutes and then go again. You can't play helter-skelter, high-tempo football for 90 minutes because you'll burn yourself out. And by the 60th or 70th minute, the girls were looking spent. Yeah,
I think like watching a bit of the first half, especially, like all the girls were just running full sprint. Like if the ball was heading out, they were chasing it down, trying to stop it from going out. They were putting in 110%, but it's football. It's 90 minutes. And New Zealand snuck one back at the end off a cross, I think. And then the keeper was a bit caught unaware, a bit flat-footed, trying to reach it. It was in the bottom corner off the header. But I suppose it's lucky that the goal did come in a 92nd minute of extra time, not earlier.
Yeah, you're right. And I guess the longer the game went on without us getting that third confirming goal, the harder the girls pushed for it, and the more you were thinking it was likely that we would get sucker punched. So I guess we are fortunate in that regard that it came late and it didn't really matter. But we're going to have to step up our game a bit. The girls, you can't blame them for playing like they're at the Olympics, because they are. And of course, you just want to give out your best effort and be the athlete that you dreamed of being, right? But you got to manage things. You got to be smarter. And against Sweden, who rollicked USA 3-0, we're going to have to be smarter. We're not going to have it all our own way like we did against New Zealand. So maybe that'll play into our hands a little bit. So when we do go forward, it's like, yep, this is what we got to do. And hopefully our finishing is a bit more on point, because there were some wayward efforts there. But Matildas play against Sweden on Saturday night at 6:30 p.m. and the Olyroos are up against Spain 8:30 p.m. on Sunday night. So plenty to look forward to. I think it's a massive achievement if both those teams could get out of the group. And once they're out of the group, anything could happen. It's tournament football.
Saw it with the Bulls. We got to the semis, and
yep,
could happen again.
Yeah, after losing 3 times against Central Coast in regular season, but we won the one that counted. So, both teams will put their form from before the tournament behind them and just, play like their lives depend upon it every time. And We couldn't be prouder and happier with the start they've made, and hopefully it results in at least a medal for one of the sides. That'd be a huge achievement for Australian football.
100%. Looking forward to it. And let's just hope we can see some good football. It's exciting.
Yeah. One more thing before we go. It was touted before the tournament, the men's football, the group that we were in was called the Group of Death. But as I'm sure everyone's heard, Arnie's recast it as the Group of Dreams. I like to think of it as like a sort of cage fight, those other teams, they're not in here with us, we're in there with them, and they should be really worried because we've got a point to prove.
And we'll see what happens. Shock the world is the saying everyone's using, I think.
That's it. So yeah, plenty to look forward to, and we'll catch you guys next time on our Olympic editions of Bull Banter.
Stay tuned for the long jump and the high jump. It's coming home.
Mate, I'm all about the archery.
Well, skateboarding's there this year as well, I think. That could be exciting.
Oh no, you know what? We're a good chance of getting medals in the surfing, surely.
Oh yeah. Well, you'd hope so. I think they've sent Lockie Rose and Puyo to the Olympics.
Ambassadors for the nice.
Yeah. Bondi Beach ambassadors.
Good stuff. All right. Well, we'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for listening to the Bull Banter podcast.